All right, welcome to the market expert. So I think what's interesting is that I don't know if anyone else subscribes to Housing Wire yet. They actually threw this all over Instagram the other day. And so this came out on the 20th, and it was just, Trump issues executive order, emergency price relief on housing. Pretty ambiguous. Like, I don't know if anyone read this or anyone saw this yet. It's really just going through, and it says, some different things that I think are kind of interesting. It says, I hereby order the heads of all executive departments and agencies to deliver emergency price relief consistent with applicable laws to the American people. And it says, and increase the prosperity of all American workers. This shall include pursuing appropriate actions to lower the cost of housing and expand housing supply, eliminate unnecessary administrative expenses, and rent-seeking practices that allow or that increase healthcare cost. All right, cool. So, like, as I read through this and as I close this door, I think it's interesting. I think what's interesting is that as we are looking at this, and as we're looking at this executive order, I think what we're probably going to see come out of this is truly this eliminate unnecessary administrative expenses. But I really think this is going to be tied to more so what they're going to do with going in and removing some of, let's say, the red tape, right, on what it takes to actually build in the United States. And we're seeing this even in California right now, right? Like, let's think about what happened in California. California, we had those wildfires, and they have to start rebuilding. And a lot of the rebuilding, what they're doing is they're getting rid of some of the administrative red tape that's associated with their very strict housing laws and building laws so that they can actually make sure that they're getting housing and getting these people back on their feet. And I think that's what we're going to see nationwide. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this kind of plays out. Because like I said, it's ambiguous, right? And it really just goes through and saying like, hey, I am telling all the departments to remove everything that you can remove to make things happen that is law abiding. That's truly how I read this. Yet I really think that when we're talking about this administrative piece, and it's going to be tied to expenses, yes. And it's also going to be tied to that red tape. This is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I think that both parties, right? Like both parties during the primaries went through and they said, hey, we're going to make sure that we start building. Like that was their thing. They said, we understand this. Like, this is a big issue and we need to make sure that people start building so people can have houses. And yet there was really no real game plan. What we heard that we're going to probably use some federal land and some different things. We're going to incentivize, and it's going to be interesting. So we're going to see how this thing plays out. I know that there's no world where we outbuild to where we actually see monstrous price decreases in the nation and make it truly more affordable. I really think what we're going to see is we're going to see it become easier for people to build nationwide. And I think that's what we're going to see. We also know this. We know that the president does not govern the Fed presidents. And when we're talking about mortgage rates and we're talking about everything else, the president cannot do anything to make the Fed presidents do anything, right? The president is not their boss. And so what we know is when we're looking at the cost of borrowing money in the United States, that is its whole thing. And so while they can go through and they can have conversations and they can have press conferences and they can do everything, those two are not directly correlated. It's going to be very interesting to kind of see how this thing plays out. But there was a lot of executive orders that were done yesterday. So let's switch over to Colorado real quick. So when we're looking at Colorado, one of the things that popped up is this article right here. Colorado reports 8% increase in people receiving help to pay heating, energy bills. And when we're looking at this, right, we're sitting in a place, and this is called LEAP. So the program's called LEAP, if we wanted to look at it a little bit more. And it's interesting because it said in November, 90,000 people applied for the LEAP benefits for the season, which was a 5% increase from this time last year. So year over year increase, 5%. And it says of those 60,000 Coloradans have already received LEAP benefits this season. So they're going through and they're saying that out of, this whole 5%, which is 90, or I'm sorry, out of this 90,000, 60,000 of these people have already been recipients of these benefits, which was also an 8% increase from this time last year. So it's going to be interesting, right? It says recent data shows that nearly 14% of Coloradans have reported being unable to pay their home energy bills. 23% have reported reducing basic expenses such as food or medicine to pay for their energy bills. Guys, I think this is the thing, like as we're looking, and we live in Colorado, and this is the thing, like we're blessed. At the end of the day, we are, like, the fact that all of us can afford to live in Colorado, there's a lot of people that cannot. And I think this is what we're seeing with higher taxes, and we're seeing we haven't even seen the impact of insurance at this point. And keep in mind, like, this will show up. Everything that has happened from the East Coast to the West Coast, and even in our backyard, but the wildfires that we have had and the hail claims that we have had in the previous year, like, they're going to show up. They're going to show up in higher expenses. And we haven't seen that impact yet. What we are seeing, though, is we are seeing impact around stuff like this, around the energy sector. And so when we're looking at these different things, what we have to understand is that we live in a very, very expensive state. We are one of the most expensive states in the nation for a lot of things, right? Especially housing, right? We have a $600,000 price point. With the cost of money the way that it is, and it is high, like, it puts the American dream of home ownership in Colorado in the rearview mirror for a lot of people. And it's not saying that they don't want to own a home, it's just saying that they can't. And now we're seeing people that are able to, either afford rent and or afford a home, and they're running into situations like this, where 14% of people surveyed, and here's the thing, I don't know how many people were surveyed. This could be a 500-person survey. This could be a 1,000 people survey. I don't know the demographic that is made up of this survey yet. And what I mean, like renters, homeowners, whomever, like, I don't know. But 14% of people surveyed say that they can't afford their energy bills. This is what makes this important. Like, as we are this conduit, as we are this connector of resources for people, we have to understand that there are programs like this, right? Like, there is this LEAP program that we understand where people can go get electricians, where people can go get plumbers, where the best price on money is, right? Like, these are the things that we have to raise our real estate IQs, where we're constantly leveling up. Right? Back in 2021, we were truly in a speed-based market, right? Where we go through and we go find people, we mention real estate, they raise their hand, they say, money's cheap, I want to go buy a house, and we help them do a deal. And we're no longer in that environment that we were in. Now we have to raise our real estate IQ to know exactly what is happening, who our resources are, who our vendor partners are, and to be able to help people with these different emerging topics that are popping up. And so when we're looking, here it goes, it says annual incomes cannot exceed the following. So when we're looking at this thing, we have a household of one, they can't receive more than $40,000. So here we go. Like, we got our single teachers, right? When we're looking at a household of two, we're talking 53,000, household of four, $78,000. So if these people are in your ecosystem, they can get anywhere from $200 to $1,000, and applications are open through April 30th, 2025. So as we're going through, what would it look like to be able to put some of this information out, to being like, hey, if you qualify for this and you've realized that your heating and cooling bills, where it's heating right now, have gone up, and you're feeling a little bit of pressure, you may qualify for this assistance through the state of Colorado. And here it is, Ryan. We got to figure that there's a lot of people that live in this area. We did look at these numbers at the last team meeting where we looked at the people that were leaving the state versus the people that were coming in. We're not seeing a huge demographic of people that make less than $100,000 coming into Colorado, but we are seeing a bigger demographic of people that make less than 100K leave. So these people are still in Colorado, and what can we do to help? Are we understanding these different things, and are we putting this information out here? So here's the place where they can go, and they can go look this up. If you want to look it up, I'm going to put it in the chat so you can actually look at what this program looks like and get any additional information. But again, we're in a skills-based market. We need to have these higher real estate IQs. We need to understand that these things are available so that we can actually go through and better assist our communities, our people, our tribes, and move forward. Let's talk about nation. So January 18th, we're looking at rear-view facing data. We're looking at Logan Bodashami, the lead analyst for Housing Wire. And so we're looking at this thing. It says some Fed members are getting nervous about rates going too high. Who isn't? Right? Like, as we're looking at this thing, who isn't? We're in real estate. We know that when the cost of money goes higher, we're having to deal with one of the most expensive price points, the biggest price tag that most Americans are actually going to purchase. And so when the cost of money starts going up, we understand that the product that we are dealing with, we're going to see more friction, right? We see that. When we're talking about a $600,000 price tag and we're talking about 7% interest rates, we see less people raising their hand wanting to spend that kind of money. So it says mortgage rates fell last week after a brutal few months of rising rates. And the question now is whether rates can keep going lower or if last week was just a pause in the mortgage rate storm before the spring home buying season gets in full swing. And yeah, right. I think when we're going through and we're looking at this thing, we're talking about rates. There's two factors that come into play for rates. One is when we're going through and we're looking at inflation. Inflation's a thing, and yes, inflation is down across many items. Yes, eggs are expensive. And we've done that to ourselves here in Colorado, right? Like we voted, we have cage-free eggs. Eggs disappeared for a while, and now they're super expensive. We did that. We voted on that as a state. And we are seeing prices go down nationwide on a lot of stuff. The other thing that we're seeing is unemployment. We have a job loss recession Fed. And what that means is that the Fed presidents, when they are going through and they're figuring out what they're going to loan money out for, they're saying that too many people have jobs. And while that is super unfortunate, that is the reality of where we are right now. Too many Americans have jobs. We have too good of an economy. And when people have jobs, they like to spend money. Even if they don't have it, they feel comfortable. They go out, they borrow money, and they spend it. And this is how we get into higher inflation. So the inflation numbers have come down on a lot of household items. And now what they're balancing is they're saying too many people are employed. And we know when people are employed, they go and they spend money. And while we talk about it in real estate, because that's what we do, we sell real estate. We help families buy, sell, or invest in real estate. So that's truly what our conversation's around. Yet we have to keep in mind that when the Fed's going through, they're not just thinking about real estate. They're thinking about people starting businesses. They're thinking about people hiring more people. They're thinking about people buying more widgets. They're thinking about people that are expanding their territory. They're thinking about all these things that actually people borrow money to go do, go buy cars, all of these things, right? Amazon, but most people, we're not really looking at credit card debt because we have the highest credit card debt that we've ever had. Like the bank account, like the balance sheets on the credit cards are astronomical at this point. But yet, as real estate agents, we're thinking about what we deal in, which is houses. And being in Colorado, we have one of the highest price points. So we know that we're affected disproportionately to a lot of the other states. So as we're looking at this thing, we're going to be watching this. There's going to be really no rhyme or reason to how we're playing with this, except for the biggest thing is going to be unemployment going forward. I don't think inflation is going to be a conversation. I don't think anyone's going to say inflation is the reason why things are going up and down. We are truly looking at the health of the economy through the lens of employment going forward. So here's Logan's forecast, and Logan is a numbers geek. Like, this is what this dude does. And if anyone listens to Housing Wire, you know that Logan goes through, and on the weekend and on Friday nights, he's looking at data. So Logan's going through it. His range for mortgage rates are going to be between 7.25 and 5.75 this year. 7.25 and 5.75 this year. We're not going to talk about the 10-year yield. Just, we know there's a correlation between the 10-year yield and for mortgage rates, and yet I don't think it's part of this conversation. So here's the thing. What we don't know is we don't know when this number is going to get hit or if it gets hit. We just know that Logan is looking at graphs and at data, and based off of everything that he's looking at on his Friday night, because this is what he does, is he's predicting at some point this year 5.75. But then he also goes this, he goes, after the most recent jobs report, the 10-year yield exceeded his peak level forecast for 2025. Although mortgage rates did not rise above 7.25 like they did last year, yields surpassed his expectations for this early in the year. Okay, so we're looking at it and saying, hey, we looked at, core product inflation data, CPI data came in slightly below the forecast. Okay, cool. So inflation down again. Despite the higher headline month-to-month print, retail sales figures missed expectations. Okay, so people aren't spending as much money. That's all this is saying. They're saying like, hey, for some reason, Amazon didn't do as good as we thought Amazon would do, because let's be real, like, this is where most people are shopping these days. And it's going through, controlled purchase portion performed well. Jobless claims increased slightly. Okay. So claims increase slightly. And here's the thing. None of us are cheering for people to lose their job. None of us. Anti-American. Like, none of us want anybody to lose their job. Yet, if people do start losing their job, we will see rates go down. And which is super unfortunate. Like, that is really one of the only ways that we are going to see rates come down quickly is if more people are jobless. Now, what we don't know, and this is what's going to get interesting, and actually Logan talked about this, I think like 2-3 weeks ago, is if you listen to that podcast, what's interesting is where a lot of these jobs are right now are in the government sector. And one of the executive orders yesterday that was signed was that there is a job freeze on hiring for government sectors. So that could be interesting. We know that the government was one of the biggest places where a lot of people were getting jobs in the United States over the last couple of years, and there's now a hiring freeze. Right, wrong, indifferent. This isn't that conversation, and yet this could have an impact. This could have a fairly significant impact on rates. And for our purpose of our conversation, we're going to talk about mortgage rates, because again, we're talking about real estate. While the rates definitely impact everything where you need money, real estate. So when we're going through it, so why did the yield and mortgage rates fall last week? And he says, first, the 10-year yield and mortgage rates were at elevated levels before. Okay, cool. This means that we would need economic data to really outperform to push both rates for the 10-year yield. Okay. So when the CPI inflation report didn't show much stronger core inflation data, bond yields fell right away. Okay, cool. So again, there is inflation. Inflation directly correlates with bond yields, yet mortgage rates don't have a direct correlation to the yield. Yes, Linda.
Before you go further into this, just want to add one more data point regarding the government jobs.
Yep.
I don't know if people know, maybe people may know, but federal government employees were just mandated to go back into the office 5 days a week. So just
Huh?
wanted to throw that out there as well, because I don't doubt that that will also impact either some government job movement or just like home movement in general.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's a great point, Linda. Like when we're looking at a lot of these executive orders that went through the other day, um, let's just think what yesterday looked like. Firstly, there was a lot of pardons that were put out, right? We saw a lot of pardons get blanketed, and then we saw a lot of executive orders, and then we also saw a lot of executive orders removing executive orders, right? Like we saw a lot of things moving yesterday, and we have zero clue what the impact is going to be. But to Linda's point, I absolutely agree. When we're seeing the government freeze on jobs on the hiring process, and then we're seeing also you have to get back to work, we have no clue what that's going to look like. And yeah, that went out, and I think it's starting with the heads of the different sectors, and then they have to start bringing their people in from there. And they did say in a reasonable time. That's what I'm saying. Like we have no clue what that reasonable time is. But go ahead, Linda.
Oh, was gonna add just a personal story, or somewhat personal story, where I have a friend and client that works for the federal government sector, and their announcement was for them to start going back into the office at the end of this month.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we have no clue. And just think about how many of these people, who knows where their headquarters is and where they moved back in 2020.
that's exactly right.
That'll be one of the big things, right? We have to keep in mind that we had a huge migration down to like the southeast of the United States, right? We saw a big migration of people that moved into Texas, into Florida, into the Panhandle, right? Like, and that's where they moved. And we have these digital nomads, if you will. Like I have a sister-in-law that doesn't work for the federal government, but you know what? She moved to Spain because again, like we just saw this uptick in people moving around and doing these different things because we could work remotely. We have zero knowledge, and someone does. There's someone smarter than me on this call that knows what this impact is going to be. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the research says, but we're going to see something. This is going to get very interesting. What the hiring freeze does and how many people maybe have to leave or want to leave their job because the rules are going to change. So we'll see what this looks like. It says, so the Fed presidents also talked about more rate cuts, spurring rates for the fall, and says some Fed members are getting slightly nervous about rates that are rising. So we're trying to talk the market down. Okay, yeah, we need to talk the market because this is what happens, right? When the Fed presidents start talking, they control the money. And depending on what they do, they actually send things into a frenzy, right? They actually send stock traders start trading or putting shorts or selling. Like they start seeing things happen, which have a direct correlation on everything else that's going on. So like these guys, what we really just need them to do is just talk about the facts and then not to say anything else. Because when they actually speak and they give their opinions sway a lot of things. So we're looking at this. We're not going to talk about mortgage spreads. We're not going to talk about this, but purchase application data is important, right? It says we're moving forward with the 2025 purchase application data because now we're out of the holidays, right? Keep in mind that we are in a very, very seasonal market, especially here in Colorado, but we're in a seasonal market. We talked about, real estate agents going to sleep as jack-o'-lanterns. They wake up as Easter bunnies, right? They've been hibernating that entire time. And the reason why they're hibernating is because buyers and sellers are putting it on pause, right? They got family, they got holidays, they got snow, like all kinds of different things are happening. So it says, however, caution, this data, 27% week to week growth should be viewed skeptical because it's all seasonal. So they're saying like we went from a time where no one's buying anything to a 20% swing. Like we're coming out of the basement at this point. Like this isn't super exciting news. So like when we're going through, here's your visual representation of that, right? Where this dark red line, we were in the here, like I said, we're in the basement, right? This is January. And so this is January 14th. And here we are, January 21st. So people are starting to wake up and they're starting to purchase. But look where we are compared to previous years. Here's 2023, 2024, some of the highest interest rates we have had in those 2 years relative to the cost of money and the purchase price of homes. And so we're seeing a little bit of an uptick. But again, here's 2023. And keep in mind, 2023 came out after interest rates did this and purchase application was still higher. So we got to watch this. Like, this is why we're saying we're not getting excited. 27% increase. Yes, super exciting. Yet we're coming from such a low benchmark that this isn't moving the needle a whole lot. But yet, what we have to ask ourselves as real estate agents is, how many of these are our clients? How many of your clients have gone out and reached out to a lender without talking to you? That's the question that every one of us should be asking right now. Are there people in my ecosystem that I had a limiting belief that interest rates were too high and nobody is going to be buying and selling, and yet we saw a 27% increase? How many of these are my clients? How many people do I need to get back in a relationship with and ask them? I saw an interesting post the other day by a mega team in Colorado, and they posted, at what interest rate would you actually consider buying, selling, and investing? Yeah, I thought it was interesting, right? You're going to get, how many people want to participate. But once, if we were more purposeful about that conversation and truly being that real estate economist of choice, asking our people like, hey, what are your real estate goals in the next 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years? Awesome. If it was a 3-year or a 5-year, why is it that far out? Is it interest rate? Is it the kids going off to college? Is it that they're planning on starting a family? And being able to help them navigate those decisions. That's what we should be thinking about. I know a lot of times we're super excited about the sale, the listing on Saturday, right? Like, in a couple of days from now, I have a listing that's coming up and it's super exciting because I know X amount of days after that, there's a paycheck. But what does our pipeline look like in the future? And how are we servicing it? How are we feeding it? How are we staying in front of it? 27% increase in purchase application data over 1 week right here. How many of those were our clients? Your pending sales, right? This is where it gets interesting. So here we are again. And as we're looking at this thing, where this dark red line, 2022 is gray. We saw it teeter off right here, but we did see a big spike. And keep in mind, these numbers are lying, and they are because keep in mind interest rates were still pretty low. Then they started going up, and we start going down pretty quickly from there. So that's why like this peak is a lot higher. But we're still a little bit higher, right? So we started off total homes 2% less single family homes in contract than last year. We dipped below it. We started off higher than 23 and 24, but yet it's dipped a little bit lower again because of interest rates. We looked at inventory, right? We're talking about inventory. We went from 624 to 632. Okay, so we went week over week. We saw some increase. And again, this was last week, so this is rearview facing data. But if we were to look at the same week last year, we went from 505 to 506. All right, all-time high on inventory, or all-time bottom, was in 2022 for 240,000. We need more inventory. We need more inventory. And here's the thing, guys, like, we are shifting to a buyer's market. In a lot of places, we are in a buyer's market. I think that I saw the nation right now is in a buyer's market. I think is something that I saw a little bit earlier. And so Colorado, we have pockets, but things are increasing. This is actually a good thing. Like, this is what we want. We want a balanced market, but we say we're going towards a buyer's market, but we're truly in a balanced market shifting to a buyer's, which is good. Like, we don't want to be in a buyer's market. That's actually not good, but we do want to be in a balanced market. Inventory peak in 2024 of 739,000 homes. So like, we're still below 2024, but we have 25% more homes right now than we did this time last year. And again, like, here's where we want to be. 2019 is the data that we care about. Normal market. And again, as we're having the conversation, 2020, pandemic. 2021, money was free. 2022, money was free until the second part of the year, and then it shot up astronomically, and it was more of the velocity that it went up in such a short period of time, which people pumped the brakes. 23, 24, it stayed elevated, the rates. So we haven't had a real normal market. But here we are. And again, a normal market for us will be if interest rates stay flat or stay flat for longer. Like that's what we need. We need more predictability in our interest rates from today and 90 days out, especially when we're about to go look here in a minute about what at least what Arvada is doing. Days on market is increasing. And so for a seller to put their home on the market and interest rates are at 7%, and then 120 days from now, they're at 7.5%, their purchase power is being dwarfed. And that's the fear that a lot of people have right now, is the predictability of what it's looking like. So here we go. We're kind of all over the board here. We dropped off and we're picking back up for your single family new listings. And this is what I'm saying, like, we're not gonna be able to build out of this, right? Unless people are willing to like live in Wyoming, and some of these places that there's not a whole lot of housing. Like that's really the only place. Like, and be thinking about there's not a lot of jobs, there's not a lot of stuff. So we'll see more inventory come on. But here's the thing. Outside of millennial buyers and your younger generations, I think what we have to keep in mind is these first-time home buyers. If a first-time home buyer can afford a home, there's your asterisk. If a first-time home buyer can afford a home, what we have to keep in mind with those people is they're just taking inventory off the board. And what I mean by that is they don't have a house. And so they're going to come in, they're going to buy a house, and they're not putting a house back on the board for somebody else to buy. And everyone else, it's one for one. Like they're just trading homes. So they're selling a house and then they're buying a house. And so while they're taking up inventory, they're at least putting inventory back on the board. So we'll see what this demographic looks like. But yet this is why we see like you can't really outbuild this because there's so many consumers that are taking over real estate. Your price cut right now, we're sitting at 33.45%. So let's call it 32%. Let's round up. We're on the 21st week. So we got 3 weeks worth of data here. And we know that 1/3 of all homes nationwide take a price cut every year. And so we're pretty much right in line. We're right in line, but this is what it looks like. Here we are. We're still a little bit elevated. Again, 2022. This is a lie because interest rates were still cheap. Who's cutting prices when money's free? Here we go. Higher interest rate. We're seeing more price cuts. We're not going to look at the bond market. We're not going to talk about that, but this is how Logan ends. He says, we have several bond auctions scheduled for this week. We will observe the demand during these auctions and hope for a less eventful week. Guys, we want it to be boring. Like it makes this call so much harder because there's not a whole lot of going on, except for we did have the inauguration yesterday. So we got to see a bunch of executive orders happen. And while we don't know the impact, we at least got to talk about them for a little bit. But yet we need a boring real estate market because then prices come down, inventory should go up a little bit, interest rates start to flatline. That would be good for us. But let's look at them. So here we go. Here's 1 month's worth of data. You know what? This is exciting. Yeah, it did tick up a little bit, but this is what we want to see, guys. We want to see some flat lines. This does bow a little bit. But when we look, right, here's January. I think this will be January 2nd. Yeah, January 2nd, 6.8 for conforming, 6.5 for FHA. This is yesterday. Or this is the 17th. I'm sorry. This is the 17th. So it's like 6.9. Let's look at this. So let's go housing wire. Interest rates right now, 7.18. So they've gone up. Right? So when we're talking about interest rates, here we go. You're conforming, we're at 7.18 right now, and your FHA 6.68. So as we're looking at this thing, yes, we want it to flatten out, but we need more of a flat line. We have to keep in mind, most sellers become buyers. They put inventory on the board, they take inventory off the board. And they need to know that their purchase power is going to be the same 120 days from now, because that's how long houses are sitting, at least in Arvada. So what we don't want to see, we don't want to see this. We definitely don't want to see this. We absolutely do not want to see this, right? Like this was 1 year's worth of time, January to January. This is what scares people away. They don't know what the cost of money is going to look like when they actually, because it's the thing, like You lock in your rate when you find a property. Sellers, most of them can't afford two houses. So depending on what loan products are available to them, they have to sell their house, get it under contract, find a home, put it under contract, lock in their rate, purchase a house. If homes are sitting longer, homes are sitting for 3 months, and you're sitting here, and then next thing you know, you're all the way up here. This is what scares our sellers away. So let's look at Arvada. Arvada right now, they're saying, hey, look, we're kind of in a seller's market. But as we're looking at this thing, we got pretty flat, right? 643,000 is your median list price. And again, your median is where we're going through and we're getting rid of all of your outliers, right? We're getting rid of the highs, we're getting rid of the lows, we're meeting in the middle. We're looking at this thing, your price per square foot, 437, average days on market, 158. I think I was just quoting 119, 120 a minute ago. 158 days on market. This has a psychological impact on the cost of money. This is why I'm saying like the cost of money is such a driver. And I'm not even saying that 6% is a deal breaker for people. I'm not even going to say 7% is a deal breaker for people. What I am saying though, is that if the cost of money fluctuates that much over 160 days, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford the same style of a house I have now, or if I'm going to be downgrading and getting into a higher price, that's what's scaring people away. These are the conversations that we need to be having with people. But your median days on market, 91. So again, here's your average, all of them added up, divided by the total, 158. Here's your median. We get rid of the outliers. We make our way into the middle. This pricing conversation is huge. We need to be making sure, what are motivations? What is people's timeline? What's the most important thing to them? Because what we know, though, is that if you price your home appropriately, 3 months on market. You don't price your home appropriately, we're talking 5 months, right? Like this is a huge swing. 3 versus 5, 158 days versus 91 days on market. And then look at this. There's price decreases, 31%. I would say those 31% of homes are coming out of these homes that aren't priced right to begin with. Then we go down here and we look at price increases. This is the first time this number has interested me. These are new builds. These are phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. These aren't people that are falling off the market, going back on and raising the price. These are the same homes that have been sitting on the market. They have the model home, and now the model home's going up in value. Builders are building again. Do we know who those builders are? Do we know what incentives they have? Do we know where they're located? That's what this number is telling me. We've had 31% increase in prices on new builds because they're going to a second phase, a third phase, a fourth phase. Do we know what the opportunity is to be in partnership with these guys to help our consumers? Because we also know this, your new build community is their own bank. Their interest rates are not going to be the same as going to a broker. Relisted inventory, yep, we're going to see this. This thing's going to fluctuate back and forth. We're at 8%. Homes fell out of contract. 13 is your inventory number, $3,000 your median rent. And it's given us a score of 49, which we look over here. We're still in more of a balanced market now, right? This is what we consider your seller's market. Yes, there's a big thing right here. We're in this balanced market. This number is going to dictate a lot of stuff going forward with your average days on market. Then when we're going through, I do think that I have something. Let's look at this real quick. I think it's on this front page. Shoot and a miss. Maybe it is right here. Yeah, there you go. There's your nations. So here's your market action report for the nation right now. So here's your difference, right? This is where the nation is sitting. We are heading more and more into a buyer's market as far as the nation goes. And I think this is important because historically speaking, we follow the coastlines in Colorado. So when we start seeing things happen in California, and then we start seeing things happen in Florida, which we know that they typically get to us next, right? Like they start on the edges and they work their way in. So It'll be very interesting, and a balanced market isn't bad. A buyer's market isn't truly bad either. It's just different. It's a different type of conversation that we should be having. And what we will see more in a buyer's market, hopefully, is lower rates, which would be super exciting.